a cognitive glow up episode because when you learn the neuroscience behind your behaviors and your perspectives and the way that you take on life, it actually shows you where your shortcomings are and what you need to work on, what is holding you back, what is setting you back, and it's all up here. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Today we're in Cuba, and I'm very excited to film this episode for you because this is something that I really enjoy. Even though I'm on vacation, I'm doing something that I love, and we have the iPhone mic here because my mics are unfortunately not working. I need to replace them, but I need this audio to be crisp. So I hope this is crisp enough for you guys. I'm currently on my reading week, and this semester I have taken a class that's actually required for me, and it's called Psychological Disorders. And in this class, I am constantly having connections to myself, the real world, and I feel like this knowledge that I'm learning is something that everybody needs to know. It is so beneficial, and it's something that really can contribute to your journey of growth. So it's basically just going to be a cognitive glow up episode because when you learn the neuroscience behind your behaviors and your perspectives and the way that you take on life, it actually shows you where your shortcomings are and what you need to work on, what is holding you back, what is setting you back, and it's all up here. It's all cognitive, it's in your brain. Your brain really controls you. I know we like to say that our heart and our mind and our soul are what control us, but it's our brain and it's the wiring of our brain. So if we want to glow up, if we want to change our environments, if we want to change who we are for the better, we want to show up in different places, in different rooms with better mindsets and a very strong foundation, then it starts here. We need to have a cognitive glow up and rewire our brain for the better for our growth. So I'm very excited, and I hope you're excited to enter this new chapter of cognitive growth that's going to manifest into your environment and into the way that you show up into rooms. So, this course that I'm taking is called Psychological Disorders, and we basically learn how to psychoanalyze. We learn different models of psychotherapy, as well as how to diagnose different disorders and just learning about all the different psychological disorders. But before we talk about all of that crazy stuff, we can come down to just the defense mechanisms. This part honestly humbled me more than it should have because, we're always talking about projecting, repressing, but there's a list of other ones that we totally forget. And I feel like once you acknowledge which one you're falling into, you'll be able to recognize what biases and what identity you're actually trying to defend, what you're trying to contradict with that defense mechanism. So let me just read out to you the different defense mechanisms to give you a little refresh so you can see if you do align with any of them. The first one, which is commonly known, is denial, and that is refusing to acknowledge something. Pretty simple, but still very easy to commit that act. Then we have rationalization, which is hiding your true motivations with incorrect, elaborately thought out, reassuring explanations. Now, that one I feel like is very common, but we don't really talk about rationalizing things very often, yet we do it a lot. Especially when we're talking about things doing it for the plot, for being delusional. That's rationalizing your delusions. Then we have projection, applying one's own unacceptable feelings, thoughts onto another individual or object. And then we have reaction formation, which is substituting an unacceptable behavior or thought with one that is the opposite that is acceptable. So, for example, if you don't like your friend's boyfriend and you say, "Oh, I love them," instead of admitting that you hate them. Then we have sublimation, which is turning maladaptive feelings into socially acceptable behaviors. So, there's actually studies that show when you acknowledge these different defense mechanisms and you replace them with healthier habits, it can improve your psychological health. And it's very humbling when you realize that you are committing these defense mechanisms. But you really have to think to yourself, like, what are these defense mechanisms trying to cover up? What are they trying to defend? What identities and biases are you leading your life with that are making you internally unhappy and psychologically not at your full potential of well being? Now, when we talk about our identity, we have to look at our core beliefs because those are what guide us through our life. It's how we view things and how we accept the whole world, how we internalize the whole world. In cognitive behavioral therapy, there is an intervention technique, and it's called the tree analogy. Basically, it's where we have the leaves, the branches, and the roots. You need to look at your leaves, branches, and roots so that you can get down to your core beliefs. So the leaves are the automatic thoughts. They just happen in situations. It's kind of like your reaction and that inner voice, like what comes in your head during certain scenarios. It's like you get a text, what thoughts come to mind? Or when you walk into a room, what thoughts come to mind? Those are your automatic thoughts. Those are your leaves. Then we have the branches that are the underlying assumptions. And so those are like your rules that guide your behavior. In my notes, I actually wrote that for underlying beliefs, it's kind of like, if I do this, then I'll be perfect. If I do things perfectly, then I'll be okay. That's kind of like one of the examples that I had written down here in my notes. Then we have the roots, which are your core beliefs. Now, these ones are harder to identify because obviously they are deeply rooted and they're full of bias. And they can sometimes have very negative interpretations, but your defense mechanisms may cover those up, right? So that's how the two kind of play together. So they are statements about the self, such as I am unlovable, I am unworthy of XYZ, I am not good enough, I am stupid, I am depressed. All of these identities we put onto ourselves when in reality we're just overgeneralizing a feeling or a scenario or something that happened to us in our lives. We're overgeneralizing it to our whole life, our whole identity. And what's really scary is then you live life with these goggles. That's the kind of the analogy that my prof gave. Like you have a blinder on with that identity that you've made for yourself, and only beliefs that confirm that identity are going to get through. So we have to rewire up here so that things can change around us, because it's not going to change if we're still only accepting things that feed our bias identity. So another thing that I found really interesting was there in this cognitive behavioral therapy, there is something called a thought record, which is where when those automatic thoughts come in, you actually track them and you ask yourself, what is the evidence that is supporting this thought? Like, is this a really irrational thought? You can kind of debunk in your mind these thoughts that are coming up that are coming from your core belief and from your underlying assumptions, those roots and the branches that are then trickling into the leaves. So an example of this is anytime you feel anxiety coming up, you'll write down the situation, the mood that you're feeling, what the automatic thought was, evidence that supports that thought that's in your mind that could potentially be irrational or just very extreme and biased. And then you also write down the opposing evidence that doesn't support that thought that came to mind. And then you'll rate what your mood feels like after doing that. Because honestly, once you rationalize it in your brain and realize, wait, like, where is this notion coming from? Then you'll be able to rewire that, because right now it's just going straight to fear, you know, that automatic thought, straight to fear, straight to anxiety. But you can change that. And another little connection that I've just personally made is to something I learned in social psychology, which is the self-fulfilling prophecy, where your irrational, or I don't want to say irrational, but like something negative, I guess it could be positive too, but let's look at it this from this perspective. If you're thinking something negative is going to happen, you can actually self-fulfill that to happen. So like it actually comes to be. But if you hadn't had that kind of belief and thought process, then it may not have actually happened. So you self-fulfill that negative outcome. And I feel like potentially what we're guiding our life with, these core beliefs, could also self-fulfill the negative biases and the negative identities and the negative outcomes that we have that fear of, could become your reality if you don't rewire your brain. So it's just so scary, because you're losing your potential. Like your potential is all the way up here, and because of those beliefs, it's all the way down here, and you're going to fulfill those beliefs that you have. So scary, guys. You need to lock it, clock it. Okay, that's kind of where the neuroscience comes into play with the social part of it. You have to rewire how you're thinking so that you don't self-fulfill the negative anxiety, depressive, like all of those type of thoughts and all of those worst nightmares, I guess you could say. And this also just really furthers my belief in, you know, praying for things, visualizing things, that it actually can create and manifest those dreams into your reality, because these are all proven by study. All these psychological theories, they are proven, they are scientific. So it's not even like this is just some mumbo bumbo spirituality. This is backed by science. It's neuroscience, it's social psychology. And having access to this information, I feel extremely privileged. And that's why I just really want everybody, anybody who wants to change their life, I want you to know these different concepts, these different theories that you can apply. Another theory in psychology from social psychology that we can relate back to this is self-verification theory. Now, I love this one, and it's basically we have a desire to have others view us the way that we view ourselves so that it can confirm our belief about ourselves. And this also goes into that desire for predictability. Humans, in our nature, we want predictability because it's a sense of stability. We know what to expect because things that we don't expect are uncomfortable, and that's why new things our brain actually fears. And you have to push past that fear and discomfort and get out of your comfort zone. That's why everyone says to step outside of your comfort zone, because that's where the growth happens. The comfort and the predictability, it's not going to get you anywhere. So again, going against those core beliefs, going against those identities and the biases, it's going to trigger that new, refreshed mind. And it's going to make things less predictable for you because now you're digging deep into your automatic thoughts. They're not, you're kind of like stopping the automatic thoughts, and you're intervening with something that's going to throw them off guard, which is what you want. And so that's why we have to break up this consistency of thought in our mind, because the consistency of your thought patterns is not leading you to growth. So just recognize that and act on those thoughts where your mind is kind of telling you, wait, should I make a different decision? Should I change? Should I do something different than usual if it's going to could potentially result in a better outcome? And that's where you have to take that step out and feel the fear. Feel the fear. It's so exciting. And after you feel the fear and you realize, that wasn't so scary, nothing bad happened, I didn't die from making a choice that is not a consistent and predictable one, then you're going to get that exciting exhilaration. And that's what life is worth living for, making those different choices, getting out of your comfort zone. It's going to fuel you. It's going to give you a new energy. Not this same old boring, depressive, like same routine. No, we're leaving that behind. We're rewiring our brain. We're having that cognitive glow up. Okay, so now along with this desire for predictability and comfort, we can also look at how that feeds into our relationships and the friends that we choose. You're going to choose people who confirm and who are within that sense of comfort. But that doesn't always mean that's a good thing. That could mean that you're allowing people to continue with unhealthy patterns around you. That could mean you're allowing people with bad habits around you. That could mean you're still holding on to friendships and relationships that are no longer aligning with you, that are from your past. But it's simply because you want that predictability, you want that comfort, and you want them to continue to confirm those biases about yourself. Your biases are working overtime, all right? Those roots are working overtime to pull everything that is attracting and confirming those biases. So you're going to still want those people in your life. It's going to be hard to let go of them. It's going to be hard to choose other people, choose other environments. But that's where we have to cut off that line from the core beliefs to the automatic thoughts. Okay. I think that was a good start to this conversation. I need to go get ready for my dinner tonight, my dinner reservation, but I really had a great time talking to you. I'm going to do a part 2 to this video to kind of build on what we just started here. So stay tuned for that. But take a moment to just let all these little connections settle in and to really process and apply them to your own self and your own life. And I also want to give you the opportunity to do your own research with the different theories that I've listed, with the different defense mechanisms I've introduced to you. If something did catch your attention a bit, do the further research, because it's never a bad thing to understand yourself better and to have more knowledge. So yes, with that being said, let's continue this conversation later. I'm going to pause for now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that I know you want to hear the second part to this. But thank you for meeting me here, and I'll talk to you guys later. I love you.